it says you're live. Good day, friends. Today we're going to talk about top REST API pitfalls. So how can you mess up a REST API, and what should you look out for when you expose a REST API to others? So my name is Victor Enta. I've been coding for almost 20 years in Java and many other languages. For the last 10 years, I'm doing almost exclusively recently training sessions at different companies throughout the world, and I've been to more than 150. I've recently had counted them. My main topics are architecture refactoring and unit testing, and also the Java frameworks that come along with developing stuff. I have this community for which the event is for which I spare more time from my life, this European software crafters community that we are running on Meetup. You would probably want to join us if you didn't already. We are the largest community in the world of people concerned of how to write code in such a way that no one wants to have your head. I think that's the best way to put it. 7,300 people in the community, which is fully remote. I think we only met once with some of you, but it's fully remote. We meet every month, we try to talk about various things. Good. I see in YouTube there are 30 people, and I see in the Zoom 60 people. So this is the usual number, around 100 people live discussing, debating here. The fun is in the Zoom. So if you join the community, you can join the Zoom and meet people much smarter than me who are arguing here in the chat every time about various ideas. So the stuff that we do in the community, I upload on my YouTube, I live stream on my YouTube channel. I should move my head like this, right? And I have to be on social media because I'm freelancing, and I have a life. Yeah, 2 kids, a wife, a lovely wife, and a cat. Recently, 2 cats. Let's see how it goes. So before we begin, I am afraid of anyone in the room taking ad literam the stuff we're going to discuss here. Let's play a game also. I like playing that. I think it's very fun to warm up a bit the chat. Where are you joining from? The country, please. And if you can, and maybe, just the country. Let's see. ISO code works. Germany, Canada. How cool is that? And here in the YouTube, let's see. France, there you go. Bulgaria, Belgium, Moldova, Poland, Indonesia, Romania. Excellent. This is always COVID. Macedonia, very good. Turkey, oh my God, how many countries? Nice. Select distinct from countries equal, okay. Serbia, there you go. Morocco, hi. So before we start I start emitting the ideas, I'm afraid of someone taking too ad literam what we're gonna discuss today here. So let me start with the laws of architecture. Everything is a trade-off. Anything that you hear, you should pass through your critical thinking and see Vietnam, oh my God, and see whether it applies in your context. Understand the pros and cons in your context. Don't just say, hey, I heard that guy, let's do that. No. Analyze in your context. Try to apply to see what's good and what's bad about what we're saying in your environment. Second law, why we do something matters more than how. How many times it happened that I went to teams? It happens, I think, every week or 2 weeks. I go to a team and I see some code. I go, and I ask the guys, why is the code like that? And almost every time the answer is the same. It's been like that forever. So whenever you take a decision about a REST API today, or any kind of decision that impacts the project structure, the architecture, the design, please follow up with a document that will explain why the hell did you do that. People 10 years from now, yourself 3 years from now is going to thank for that, because now, just yesterday, I had a consultancy with a group, and they did not know why the code was like that. They literally had the same Hibernate entity copy-pasted 7 times in their code, and they couldn't tell me exactly why. So, REST API. API, but we've been building APIs for 50 years already. And I want to start with this law from one of the creators of the TCP/IP protocol. It's called, his name is Postel, and this is a famous robustness law. Be conservative in what you do, but liberal in what you accept from others. Conservative in what API you expose, but liberal in what you consume from others. Interesting. That's a good way to start. So here it is, versioning. I should put the officials. Yes. Versioning. Now, before we enter, one of the biggest problems in APIs in general is versioning. To go a bit philosophical, we break things into smaller pieces. We put APIs in front of them in order to break down complexity. The price to pay for breaking down complexity is the fact that the APIs in front of us have to be stable. And whenever you change them, you suffer. So, in case you never heard of it yet, I'm sure you did, but major version, minor version, patch version. Major version increases when you do a breaking change in your API and your clients must update. A green minor version is when you pretend to have a backwards compatible change, so help us God. And patch means you just did some implementation fixes, maybe a performance change a little there, right? So let's play a game, guys. The first one. If you use 120, would you be able to run to use 1.2.1? Yes or no? Yeah, poll. Haha, I'm doing a poll with the Zoom friends here. Okay, let's see. So we have all yes, all yes. Thank you. You are all right. Yes, probably. Huh? What do you mean probably? Life is cruel. We hope they didn't break some semantics, even though the REST API might maintain the open API unchanged. They might have changed some semantics. The same Boolean that came might have a different meaning tomorrow. That could qualify or not as a breaking change. But the open API should be, yeah. 1.3.0, should you be able to use that? It's a larger minor. It's always, yes, maybe. A larger minor means they've added something new to their API. Maybe a new function, maybe a new parameter to the input, something like that. In theory, yes. Would you be able to run 1.10, mind that I am lowering the minor version? Should put another option here, it depends. Oh, I see some confusion here. Well, technically, when you go backwards with the minor version, you might, I see half here, almost half. You might say here that maybe the feature that they've added in 1.2.0, it's exactly the feature that you're using. And if you happen to lose exactly that feature when you go backwards, kaboom. So probably no. That's also fun. Let's talk about Spring Boot. Let's talk about major version 1.2. I won't even ask you here because that's the definition. The major version increases when you do a breaking change. Right. Now, I want to play another. So you can't, right? You can't upgrade and you will have compilation failures, work to do. Good. Let's play a game, and this time it's tricky because normally in the group it's easy, I can hear everyone. Now, use the chat, please, and point me to the line number. The game is called Hack Lab. What can cause a breaking change? This is one request that I currently receive. This is one response that I currently return. This comes to me. This goes out of me. I'm here. Okay? And here's the game I want to play. Tell me the line number and what I could break on that line number to cause a breaking change and force my clients to upgrade. Come on, and I'm going to draw what I hear. I'm going to try to follow up what you say. You are 80 people in Zoom and 70 people on YouTube. 1 to 6, any rename. If I put here any rename, for example, phone number, I blow up. What else? Change the URL, perfect. The REST resources should be in plural. You put an S, you blow them up. The path, the method, yeah, post. Okay, that's the easiest one. Yeah, what else? Come on. What can I do in my contract to break my clients? Fun game to play. Line number and what I can do. If you don't see your idea yet, tell it in the chat. Just line number and two words. I'm gonna understand. How can I break my contract? The types, that's evil. I like that. Thank you. Thank you, Hussein. Let's make 37 a number, not a string. Kaboom. Remove a field from here. Don't agree with that. If I remove a field from the input, the client could still give me the field. I'm just gonna ignore it. Now, change a field's name, it was told, yes. Add a new country in the response. That's a good one. That's an evil one. I like that. So let's suppose that your response now can also provide Indonesia. There. Remove a currency. Thank you. These are breaking changes, yes? Let me try to put them in red. You get the point. Change the date format. Don't you hate this format, guys? All developers I know hate this format because in the United States, it's 1st of March. In Europe, it's 3rd of January. So we want to change the format and to make it like year, month, day. And if you ever have to choose that format, please start with the year and then follow up with the month. If you start with the year and a dash, we all know that month follows. It's standard. Make a field required. Hi, Ralph. Make a field required, something that wasn't yet there. You make it required. Response in XML. Oh my God, no, not that evil. Come on, what you're doing to me? Response in XML. Let me just, I lost the chat for a second. How can I close the participant list? Yeah. What else? Culture invariant flag. What? Date format validation of email. Validation of the email field. Guys, have you noticed that this is not a valid email? If you put a pattern here, regex, you're done. You blow the request. You won't accept. You will throw 400. Remove field from response. Thank you. Thank you so much. Validation in general. Yeah, you could generalize it like that. If you don't see your idea, repeat it in the chat. I might have missed it. Please remove field. Response as text. Nothing wants to send a comma separated value back to the perfect. Make it a soap. Good joke. It was told already. What else, guys? You still miss some of them. Make it a list. Oh yes, Corina. Thank you, Corina. Let's suppose that email, I turn it into a list. Kaboom! Kaboom! We're good. I don't think I can point to another. Group some properties. Thank you, Bogdan. You take first name and last name, and you want to do object-oriented programming. And you say name, and you follow up with a brace like this, and you wrap the first and last name into a brace like this. Goodbye. ISO alpha 2. Oh, beautiful. You don't say row, you say ro. Oh, evil. And recently I heard one camel case to snake case. Yes, it's a rename. I heard some idea that really crushed my brain. He said, what if here, Victor, instead of taking the ID, something is wrong with my tool here, please, text. What if instead of taking the ID, I will take instead, not the ID, but the email, and interpret the same string here as an email, not as an identifier. Technically speaking, you still take the same URL, but this has a different semantic. Oh my God. So the full name, the required, the regex, the minimum, the validation in general, this one not supported, this one added, this, yeah, you've nailed them all. Bravo. You are experts in breaking your API. Good. Now comes the real discussion. You broke the API, you have to have your clients to upgrade because you don't want to maintain multiple major versions. So what do? Well, you can expose multiple versions for a limited time frame. And the emphasis is on limited, yes? That's going to pollute your code everywhere with if version. Then you have to track down who's calling your API and convince them somehow. How you can track down clients? I have some of the companies I work with, they can't know who calls them. That's a very sad story. If you want to upgrade the REST API version of your microservice, you don't know who calls you. We don't even know who to talk to. Right? You can track them down by GVT tokens, by API keys, by trace IDs in the logs. And then you can actually go and look at their past payloads to see whether your change impacts them. It's a discussion there. Some might provide a field in the request, others don't. What they typically do is not science, is more of an... But then you have to convince your clients to upgrade. And I won't go there. I won't go there. There are a number of techniques you can try. a number of techniques you can try. Don't do this, please. If random less than 0.1, throw exception. Adrian, if you can adapt the old versions to the new format, then why did you cause a breaking change in the first place? I'm talking about major version upgrade. When you break your clients and they have to change their code. This is the game here. Right? So this is painful. So that's why we all want to avoid breaking our major version, because then we have to run down people on the hallways and yeah. So what could you think of doing is to try to make your API as future-proof as possible. Straight from one of my clients' code base comes this example. Today, my system only accepts, can process a single email. But tomorrow, who knows? So let's put a list just in case. Tomorrow, I only support work phones. But just in case, let's put this around to have room to also add tomorrow, who knows? Home phone, toilet phone, who knows? But then this gets even easier. If you look here, random list of attributes with any key and any value. Technically, that should be in between quotes there. That'll help us all. You just bypassed the schema. Technically speaking, you are making fun of OpenAPI at this point, of any kind of schema, because you can add any new attribute. This is the end. Exactly. You just brain damage your clients. Of course, we are overcomplicating it, and you are making it unusable today. Your clients are going to make a mess in their code base. You're going to make a mess in your endpoint because what? Because you're afraid. So how can you version? Suppose that the inevitable happens. Yagni. Look, yes, Yagni. Keep it simple, stupid. Yes, of course. It's going engineer overboard in the API. Version 2, under customer ID. What that wants to say is that you have a monolith, and the customer area is version 2. Maybe the order area is version 1. You can version the entire URI schema. This is more common today, in microservices at least. But there is another scary idea that you can think of. If you have V2, perhaps you have a different microservice, complete different microservice. With a separate database, separate Git, separate CI. That. I heard several times that if you need to major version, Victor, that means that we create another microservice and we kill the old one. I was like, what? Paired with the proper DevOps culture and strong support from some platform team and some serious motivated people, this can work. As long as you kill V1 in a matter of months, this could work. Nice. Okay, so breaking API, this is the first topic that we covered. Now, guys, suppose you expose a REST API like this, and you happen to return here a data structure, which also happens to be your core domain model, your core structure that you manipulate in your main complexity in your backend. If you have a database behind, very often you store exactly this in the database, maybe with an ORM, maybe manually. What do you think about this? Bad. Bad. What's bad about this? I should try to make it less interactive, because anything you change in the entity would probably be persisted, and the exit of the method, yes, will probably be saved back and also leaked out. Exactly. Ralph is like, oh no, don't do this. You are on YouTube and you are leaking out entities, your most precious data structure. It's out in the wild. Controllers should use DTO. Exactly, guys. Now, there are a couple of reasons why this is so bad. First of all is security. You might leak unwanted fields, right? Privacy, GDPR and friends. Then, the fact that you expose now your core internal data structures, you usually also mapped to database, means that you've frozen that structure, because your clients will start depending on it. Okay? Yeah, well, don't say open session. Well, yes, correct. Right? So technically, the moment someone sees that structure, you lose control on that. It's frozen.
Can't touch this.
you will be afraid to change it because you're going to blow clients overseas and they're going to come visit you in the middle of the night. FBI, open up! You just broke your API. Exactly. That's the from an architectural point of view. Exactly, Ralph. This freezes your core domain model. Exactly. Now, also, some could say it's okay, Victor. We can fix it. We know we have JSON ignore. We can tweak this. We can add some annotations on this class so that we can still change it to some extent. Yes, but that's going to add trash to the source file of your most precious class in your code, right? Yes, exactly. Use dedicated DTOs, data transfer objects. So indeed, DTO for the win. Just a second, I just realized I don't have my PowerPoint with me. Oh, there. My other screen there. So DTO for the win. It's because we want to separate contract from implementation, and we want to make the contract clear and documented. It's something that many developers hate to write. Long live ChatGPT. You need to document your API as much as you can. And by the way, if you ever think of using an AI tool to automate document your API, try to prompt it before that the documentation generated should be very, 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 very concise and not too poetic. Anyway, good. So separate contract from implementation, the principle decades old. Right? That's what we do when we expose data transfer objects. Good. Now, also fun, any design decisions in the REST API that will trash performance? Ooh, I will share a few. One we already saw, serializing the entity. If you use an ORM and you throw this entity out in the wild, you might see in the log unwanted lazy loading, downloading 100 megabytes from a database, real story, pushing it in a JSON without you even realizing it. It's called lazy loading, and it happens when the frameworks try to serialize your Java object. They will hit the database for freaking sake. Yes. Auto-generated implementation from OpenAPI contract. Well, Alexandro, I generally prefer to write my Java classes and extract the OpenAPI contract, but that could also work. I hate having generated classes in my source. I prefer to extract stuff because my code is my life. This is where I live. The contract is a byproduct with the proper mechanics to automatically fail the build if you mistakenly broke your OpenAPI contract. By the way, I should show you that, guys. We stop a bit the discussion for something very fun. OpenAPI. You can write a unit test here using a library called OpenAPI Tools OpenAPI Diff. You can write a test on the Jenkins that will prove that the OpenAPI you extract from your application deployed in memory matches the OpenAPI that you've persisted in your class path in Git here previously. So you can't, by mistake, break your contract anymore without breaking a test, right? So you load from Git, you load from your running current application, from your current code, and you compare them. And if the OpenAPI diff says breaking change, then the test fails. Interesting. If you want to see the Git for this, type this in your clean architecture of Git. Good. Yeah. Yeah, correct. Correct. Yeah, I showed you. So OpenAPI can have one advantage. It can generate for both backend and frontend. It's right, but I typically extract it from the backend, get the OpenAPI in, hand it over to the frontend, and the frontend generates TypeScript interfaces at build time. That's me 8 years ago in the project I led. All right. Second bad decision you can take is to only expose get1 by ID when you know you have millions of products in your database. Folks, you're doing this every day. What's wrong with exposing a single get by ID? Well, this opens the door to abuses. Your clients might want to download a lot of your data and might end up doing this. The famous network call in the loop anti-pattern. Maybe not ID, discussion. Maybe you want to obfuscate the ID, maybe some external ID, UUID, yada, yada. But from a performance point of view, this kills performance because they are going to traverse network over and over in a loop. Crime for performance. So you should consider exposing a bulk retrieve to get many out, with a body, but it's a post, Victor. kind of weird. Yes, but did you know that since 2021, the get verb is allowed to have body? When I went to school, get didn't have a body, just the URL. And then, boom, now you can have a body. You can have a body with, yeah, JSON. Here's the IDs I need. And the server is going to hand you over the whole list back. Done. You can improve performance hundreds of times. Real life from some of my clients. Also fun, A calls B and B calls C, and the response that C generates, B forwards as it is to A. It's like man in the middle, actually. It's like man in the middle. It's like, what the heck is that? I'm going through B to get to C. Maybe there is some security architecture that you want to obey, in which that's the life. But not, if not, please consider A. You know why I see people doing this? Because with microservices, somehow we grow convinced, we tend to ignore the outside world. We just work in B and we don't even know that A, we don't see this really. We don't see that we are in a chain, and we don't realize that A goes to us just for us to go to C. Although we could, but yeah. You have the body in the gap, but you can use the third party. Yeah, because this can go through proxies which might choose to drop the body on the way. Pact, yes. Pact is also cool to keep contracts aligned between consumers and producer. I have a YouTube video about that, but I heard recently an argument that if you need Pact to keep contracts in sync between your microservices, then you have too many microservices. No, the other extreme. So DTO for the win. DTO for the win. Excel? Why? All great business ideas start in Excel. Many of us in the IT industry, we are called in to automate a flow that people have done for ages using Excel. So people approach our system thinking of us like we are a store of data. And we developers believe the same. So I'm going to show you some example here. We have the get mapping returning out this DTO, inventory item DTO. Simple as that. I will get there in a second, Gabriel, in a second. And then you say to yourself, since I already have the DTO, let's use it also for the create flow. What's wrong with this picture? Come on, point it out. There is a mistake. No, oh yes, Hussein, you're right. Very well played, Hussein. Hussein is on fire today. A lot of good ideas here in Zoom. Yes, there is a hidden, you introduced technically a coupling between these two. Thank you, exactly, very good design point of view. But there is something more dramatic. You might not need the whole data everywhere. For example, ID. You don't send the ID on the other side. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, you actually can mislead your clients to believe that they can give you the ID. That's plain wrong. All right. What else? So ID is not there. It's generated by the backend from sequence view traditionally. What else? Doesn't make sense here. Status. Why would I? Exactly. Creation date. What the heck? Creation date. Why would the client give me that? Also fun. The last three properties, you already nailed them, correct? All of these three are just useless. The client can change stock. Well, if you could create the product with a stock equal to 10. It's not really stupid. What it is stupid is that you're passing data, which will always be null when you see the object on this flow in the backend. The backend will wonder, why do I receive a structure that has 7 nulls inside? While the client is going to wonder, why do I have to pass both supplier ID and supplier name? Why do I have to pass status? So the open API contract is misleading, and so is the implementation of that thing on the server side. So both clients and servers is confused on this. So of course, you should not use the same object. You should create dedicated object. One is get item response, get item request. That's why I said once that DTOs are a code smell, in the sense that DTOs mean that suggest that you have the same concept X DTO that you used both here and there. What I want to say with that is that I would rather have methods named like the action I'm performing, response, or a request. Some teams further add the DTO just to have it clear that that's a DTO for searchability. But technically speaking, separate structures, clean and nice. Done. Exactly. Oh my God, Alexandru foresaw where I was going. CQRS. What the heck is that? Command query responsibility segregation. We like to use fancy words, guys, right? Command query responsibility segregation. If command in this world is an action doing a change, query in this world is an action retrieving data. Okay, so where am I going with this? Well, most people perceive software systems as stores of records at the beginning of the development, at the inception of the project. The business, the PO, the developer themselves, everyone treats our software as an Excel that they can create, read, update, delete, and search records. And how many times did I hear teams complaining that the business asked for features that they had in Excel? For example, the famous filter by the possible values, when you can select the values that are there in the column that follows. Business is asking for the same feature that they had in Excel, which are very hard to implement. So, as the system grows complex, as it gets more and more features in, you will realize that when we read, we might need to aggregate some data to enrich, to get more from other places and display. And we are deeply concerned about the speed and availability of our API. When we change the data, we usually want to store more metadata, like it was the case right now, the audit columns, as you named them, Alexandru. Exactly. And the key concern when we change the data is to leave the data consistent behind, is to follow, is to respect the rules of our domain. Done. So then what does CQRS do? Comes and says, let's use separate data models to write and read our data. Let's not use a single data for both purposes. And we actually applied CQRS just now when we broke the DTO into response and request objects. We broke the model in two. This is CQRS applied at the API level in the most innocent and safe and nice way. There are no downsides to doing this, really, apart from maybe some more mapping code here and there. But technically, it's clear contract, clear implementation. However, CQRS has a number of levers. Now, the danger in my discussion here is not to fall into discussing 1 hour about CQRS pitfalls. So I'm going to keep it short, guys. You can use CQRS also in the way you talk to your database. If you use an ORM that like Hibernate, like Entity Framework in C#, like Doctrine in PHP, that's gonna make it very easy for you to bring all the entity as a whole, as an object from the database, and you might abuse it. You might start fetching from the database entire entities. For example, when you search, that's highly inefficient. So that's what the solution I propose here, also a kind of a CQRS, is to select a projection with only the fields that you really need to display in the interface for performance, nothing more. This is for the ORM friends in the room. If you're not using an ORM, you probably don't face this problem, right? Okay, now going for higher performance, we will at some point have to cross a very dangerous line, the consistency line. In the sense that up until here, we can maintain strong consistency. We did not hurt anyone. But if you want to get very, very fast, and if you want to get very aggressive, we can talk about a concept called distributed CQRS, which I think I'm just going to scroll through because the time will not allow. 1 minute, I'm going to talk more. This distributed CQRS comes and says, if you want to to reach higher availability or performance for your API, why don't you write in one storage, but you read from another storage which is more efficient with reading? Redis, Memcache, kept in for memory, materialized view, pre-aggregated, Elasticsearch, full text search. These things, however, since they read from a different store, they have to be kept in sync asynchronously, and that leads to a lot of pain in reality. Many systems fit well with the notion of information that is updated Excel style. adding distributed CQRS, this madness with having separate write and read database, is gonna add complexity, lower productivity, says Martin Fowler, and add risk even if you have a ninja team developing your software. And with that, I will close the topic of CQRS, which I personally know to have caused so much pain for the dev teams all over the world. So the idea here is to handle differently the reads and the writes, nothing more, if you distill it a bit. And with that in mind, we run into a put that returns data. Another habit well entrenched in our practice. But guys, put is a command. Why would the command return the data? Now we do this, I know why, for laziness, for convenience, but I've officially I heard about how to put it. You can get into security vulnerabilities with this. You can get into very weird behavior. So that is something we do, which is incorrect, but it's cheating. The moment you feel this starts to get fishy, give up on that. And instead of having the put returning the new data, have the client follow up with another clean get to get the data out of you. Many times I see people doing this idea to return the data immediately, the newly updated data, for laziness. They say performance, but they never measured how much time yeah. Or you can put a URI but it's a put, it's an update. So why would you return? I'm just saying for those of you who do, that's not really correct. Next game I want to play with you is ask you, what do you think is wrong in this screen? Any feeling about this screen? Interesting. It is an update, by the way, not a create. Interesting. You hooked on the ID here. Interesting. Some groups tell me, when I don't put this here, some groups tell me, where is the ID, Victor? Other groups, like here in the room, complaining that, why did you expose the ID? Ooh, someone was pen tested. This is a potential security vulnerability, especially if you expose this API to the internet, not to the intranet back office. SQL injection. You could try to play SQL injection also on this. Read and update in one screen. Not really, because when you get this from the database, you get it with from the backend. You get it with a clean get. But when you put it back, you put it with a put. So what else is weird here? Not the ID. Status code could have been more meaningful text. What do you mean? You mean like more label for, yeah, correct. Victor already pointed the patch here. All right, I'm gonna kill patch in 2 slides from now. What else? Too many actions with one command. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you. Too many actions with one command, but it's too broad yet. The activation, there are 2 problems really in the game here. The first apparent problem is that although you are active, you have a field called the deactivation reason. What the hell is wrong in here? Right? This shouldn't be here. This should be gone. Why is it there? Right? So that's one thing that you can see. So that's very easy to fix. You put an let me play Angular for you. ngIf, done. The field is out. Put can be used to create a new entity or modify an existing one. Hardcore discussion, yes, if you allow your clients to create. But here I'm editing. I said, this is one problem. And the other problem that you spotted from YouTube is that there are too many actions with the same screen. Yeah, indeed. And let's play the game here, guys. Let's suppose that one of the users of your application opens this up and starts elaborating on what wonderful description to write in that field to increase fear of missing out and make more people buy the product. And of course, for this purpose, he has to talk to a friend or two Of course, hey, ChatGPT, make me a wonderful offer for selling an old chair. ChatGPT is going to whisper in his ear, and then he's going to construct a description, la 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 la. Wonderful, fantastic. But then while that 30 minutes of debating with AI, someone else buys the product. What's going to happen if you have in your screen the stock that you had 30 minutes ago in the database? What's going to happen? Obviously, friends, and you should say that faster than you did. You should tell me that immediately when you see the screen. It is dangerous. The stock is too volatile to be kept in the screen. You saw other things in the, yes, locking. I'm going to locking, exactly. Here, we have an issue. While I'm working with the screen, someone might sell a product. So what's going to happen there? We're going to have a collision when you try to send your put to the server. Because the last thing you want, if you had a database that had, for example, 10 items, when you fetch them, you brought your 10 items from the database in your front end here, yada, 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 you played your ChatGPT on the description, and then in the meantime, the database now holds 9 because someone else sold the product. If you go back to this, into the database, you just ruin your consistency. You're just ruining, this is called a concurrency issue. And there are some solutions to solve with locking, pessimistic or optimistic. I'm not going to explain, we're running out of time. It's not the scope anyway. So what can you do instead better is to ask yourselves, what do users normally do? I don't want to open the locking discussion because it's very deep. If you want, after we finish the hour, we can talk about locking, whatever you want, I'm yours. But here, you could go to the clients, to the users, sit next to the user and watch them work with your application and see, this is IntelliJ feeling neglected. Here, you can watch the clients that you have do their job. And then based on what they usually do, you can craft an API, an UI and an endpoint, which matches their typical actions. In other words, you might observe that they usually change this area, or they usually change this area because they got a phone from the supplier, or they decrease the stock because they sold the product by phone, or they mark a product by inactive. Okay. The most crazy answer I ever got to this question, what's wrong with the screen, came from the biggest e-shop in Romania, who immediately answered, Victor, this data comes from 4 microservices. Why is it on the single screen? I was like, oh shit, you're right. Oh my God, yes, correct. Case closed. This is wildly unrelated data. So what you do instead, you design an interface that matches the typical user actions like this, which has a name, a description. When you press this little button, you get to edit this. When you press this checkbox, you get a dialogue asking, why do you want to deactivate this? And you say reason, because. When you click on the edit for the cost, you edit the cost and you put the cost. When you want to sell, you sell. I say, I want to sell 2 items. You never send a full put back to the server. You send partial updates like this. Why is this good? Well, first of all, this tells a story. It tells how your API is supposed to be used, guys, here. It says that you can change the details, you can deactivate, you can sell, or you can change the cost. You see? So this thing over here will guide the user to do what they usually want to do. Now, after all of this thing, the problem is that you could observe here that I'm using URLs that contain verbs and, I messed it up, that contain verbs and sub-resources. Still, let's follow up. The API is more suggestive, tells the business flow, less risk for concurrency, cleaner implementation. The problem is that you have to care about the users. That you have to have access to the users, that you have to have a healthy dialogue with your users so that you know what they typically do. Maybe you have a power user who's your friend. Then you can use, and you can ask him, hey, or her, what do you typically do? Right? And you will design your, there is another problem here. If moving from a edit screen to a grid like that requires you to throw a task into the front-end team, you're not going to do it. In other words, if you're not full stack, this change will cause a lot of friction with the front-end team. So only a full stack team can do such a change. Technically speaking, someone on the way of analysis of this project you should have done that. But if they throw at you a screen like that, you should immediately say, hey, but this can change independently. Yeah, you should need to spot this in your REST API. All right? So what happens next is that I've seen people, when they saw here deactivate, they pulled the old book and they started hitting me with the book saying, this is not REST, because it's a verb. Yeah, it's a verb, so it's more suggestive. So here's the catch. If you play REST religiously, you will have a lot of complexity in the put and patch, also in the post. Get will be bored. Search is also interesting, there is no delete. So by default, REST does not spread the logic in a good way, in a uniform way. And also it has limited semantics. You can only get put, post, delete, that's it, and nouns. So whenever you feel like the REST starts to limit your semantics of your API, you are free to enhance it, in my opinion, with sub-resources or actions, verbs, that will tell a better story, okay? Now, I don't want you to take from this that, hey, Victor said screw REST. No, I want you to stick on REST for as long as you can until you feel that REST is limiting you. Then break out. This is deep. You need to take it with a grain of salt. Right? What does this sell? Well, item, you sell the item. What else would you say? You sell the item. What can you sell? Delete, soft delete. Good question. When you fire a delete to the backend, is the backend allowed to just mark the record as being active false? Yeah. As far as I'm concerned from outside, after I fire a delete, this discussion is more, this is very good. This is very good. Hussein, this is a wonderful question. Can you keep it for, I'm going to put it on the text file that I'm going to debate with you. This is very good. Very powerful question. So prepare your debate questions, guys. I'm finishing in 5 minutes or 10 maximum. Back on track. So I'm suggesting to go with REST as long as it feels natural. When you get something in very complex domains, there is a wonderful, wonderful talk in here. By the way, the links are already online on LinkedIn and Twitter. I posted the slides, and in the slides, you can click the links to go to the wonderful talk about how REST makes a mess of your REST API in a very complex domain. It has to do with domain-driven design and very good stuff. REST patch. Someone said patch. Yes, Ralph, very good. Wait. Let's wait for the opinion from Ralph here, guys. Straight from the chat in Zoom. There's a discrepancy between use cases you want to have executed and resource orientation. You have actions here, things there, right? Should an object expose data or functionality? Is the same debate, is the same stuff. Are we just CRUD or are we more than CRUD? If your application is simple enough, you just enjoy CRUD, yay. But if you have more complex domains, right? Yes, Elise, you are right. Elise, you read the paper. REST did never say you should never have verbs. There is a subtle difference in there. But let's go to patch, because I hate patch. I officially hate patch. In many applications, I feel it gets to too much pain. When you say patch item 1, in case you never saw this verb before, if the body contains status and the activation reason, then you're supposed to take the values from here and push them in the database and overwrite those fields. If you find description, the semicolon null, you need to delete the description from the database. Right? That's what you should do with, but good luck parsing this in Java. The other fields should not be present, which means unchanged. How would you figure out in a Java object whether they gave you another field or they gave it null? Yeah? This is very hard to parse. TypeScript and JavaScript has a chance. Java is dead. Or many other, C#, PHP, you're dead. Now, in order to make a better sense of this and ease the parsing, there is actually a standard about how you should patch over JSON. So you are setting this property to this value, you are setting this property to this value, and you are removing this. This is standard, right? Protobuf. Yeah, but here, patch, why I'm angry with the patch is not because it's hard to parse or requires me some new stuff to learn. No. I'm angry with patch because it does not carry any meaning. When you receive a patch, you know what's the best analogy for you guys? Have you ever received a commit in Git whose commit message was YOLO? That commit message did not say what it was its intent. You had to reverse engineer from the actual files changed. What the hell was the guy thinking? Right? This is exactly the feeling you get with patch. Why? Why in the world does the guy changes the status and the activation reason and it wipes out the description? Why? What is the meaning of that action? What is the use case? Now, if you really, again, guys, remember the laws of architecture. This is not officially wrong. It's just dubious and might rapidly lead to a mess in both backend and the client. Because the client doesn't know what are the intended actions. However, this is perfectly reasonable if what you're doing over there is a repository of CRUD data. If you just store some phone numbers, some customer details, this is perfect for you. Still hate it. Okay, but who am I? What I'm trying to say here is that instead of having a large data coming into you, I would rather look in how my application is supposed to be used and express some meaningful actions in some verbs or sub-resources for the users to understand. Much better in practice. And I think we can go to an end right now. We kind of reached the end. A summary of the design pitfalls, and then we can open up the debates. So patch is kind of missing. Yes, exactly, but patch is kind of missing the business logic. It's kind of missing the, what does it do? What is the meaning of that action? It would be far better to say here, inactivate or deactivate. And maybe this would return into a call going to deactivate, and then another call to set the description to null. Right? Maybe this turns into two APIs. I don't know. It's missing the why, exactly this. Right, now, you break up the actions into meaningful things, semantic rich for your clients, and also in the UI, if you want to go that far. Then, you should go that far, if you have a browser in front. Summary, first pitfall, PowerPoint, breaking changes. Make sure that everyone in the team knows what a breaking change could be. And there was a bit of mystery, I'm sure, in the room, when someone suggested to remove one value from the list of countries that were supported. Let me bring back that slide, because that was a moment of emotion over there. Some will not agree that this is a breaking change, but technically you are returning Belgium, where you said in your schema that you only can return a rule. Maybe you have an enum in there, right? So technically, this is a breaking change. Okay. Expose internal domain model. Yes, that's a problem because you will leak out your core structures. What you want to do instead is to expose dedicated objects. Mind that you don't leak GDPR personal information out, of course. Again, this comes paired with the first here. Don't force your client to remote call in a loop. Offer them some operations that they can use to bulk retrieve your data. If you have millions, it's smart to do this from start. I have a client that actually does not have the get by one ID at all. They only have the get many. That feels a bit of post-traumatic stress in there, but use the same DTO for post and put and get. And then you will wonder what are the fields used in that flow, right? Separate structures, request response, right? A large put or a patch, CRUD forever, is me lacking semantics. So what you want to do is more task-based endpoints. Command query responsibility segregation, the idea that you have flows reading, flows writing, and you can handle them completely differently in some cases. And also paired with the habit of returning data from put, which is a bit cheating. You should acknowledge that. And the religious practitioner of REST who says no to any verb or sub-resource. Don't be afraid to step out of that and put a bit of semantics in place here and there. I think I'm done. Amazing, in less than an hour. What's wrong with me today? So, we have here a wonderful question. Keep the questions coming, folks. So if you have questions, what tools do you use to draw on the screen? This is the most, I should do this when we start any workshop. It's called Screen Brush in Zoom. I should do this, to do. Tell at start the tools I use. Anyway, good. What other questions? If a verb in English can always be a noun. Oh, no, I can't believe this. For example, can you give me an example, Marianne? All right, we have questions over here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, for example, if you want to have a verb like register, for example, okay, you could say registration, and then it's already a noun, and it's like a good resource that you can put or post.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's clear. Register could be a book. Register could be a verb to enroll to. Yeah, nice, excellent. Right, and you can see the confusion in there growing in the colors. Right, that's clear. Mind that. I think that's very useful. Then this one, I want to tackle this in the order. Stuff delete. For those of you who are not aware of that, what that means, it means that you have a field in the database called isActive. Let's say product dot is deleted equals 1, which means that the product is never gonna be returned in, for example, searches. Search never returns, or maybe it's a business rule. Logical deletion is very interesting. It keeps following with money. Logical deletion is something very fun because of distributed consistency. Let me tell you a story. If you placed an order, imagine, just a second. If you place an order with a certain product, and after that the product is no longer part of the offer of that eShop, technically you are not allowed to physically remove the product from the database if you don't want others to replicate your data. That was deep. So what do? Whenever you expose some data in a microservice architectures, for example, there is the idea of you expose it, you freeze it. In other words, even though you might choose not to return the product in searches, if someone does a get for the product that was deleted, it should not return 404. It should return some data in which you should say the product is no longer part of the offer, something like that. It's a very, very complicated discussion over here, and the rest suggests, of course, that if you do a delete, after delete product 146, if you do a get, then you should go a 404. Bad luck, screw rest. It's a tough discussion here. Very good point. Very powerful discussion there. Technically, you are no longer rest. If you say to the delete, you reply with a 200, job done. Then they follow up with the get to give them the data. It's a bit, they could say, what? Right? Such behavior you should explain in the documentation of the delete. You should document this. And you can explain that we do this because others might point to our data, and we promise that once we export some information, some ID, once we make it visible, then we promise, we swear to God that this data will always be there. This also plays nice with event-driven systems. If you loop through a Kafka event stream and you want to revisit the history, it's good to have the data that you had over there. What this principle goes for is actually more than that. You change a field of the product, you generate a new ID. This is horror. This is horror, but I've seen this in action. So once you publish some data, the data is immutable. Maybe that's too far for this evening. I will delete this. Just a horror story from the domain-driven design book. Okay, so very good discussion here. Delete should technically wipe the data out and follow up with a 404, but you choose not to because you want to have the data in the past for further reference. Very fun. Thank you very much, Hussein. Wonderful. Wonderful. Rabbi, how design identity application, 404, okay, good. I don't want to return 404, Hussein, that's the point. Okay, good. What else? It's in the how we're managing code styles and code formatting in a project. With IntelliJ style sheets shared among the team, Bartolome. If we change response object, does it need a version also in the name? Oh, let's handle that first because it's easier. Let me copy it from here. Can I copy? Where can I copy it? I think I did already. Yeah, paste. Yes. Thank you, Tomislav. If we change response, it depends. If it's a breaking change, of course. If it's a breaking change, it could be a breaking change if you delete a field. Your response is a breaking change. Adding a field is not. Why does it keep following with Marian? Marian is to blame for everything. What the hell? Okay. Good session. Hope to 200 and yes, 202 if you accept it asynchronously. Should we modify same domain entities to support different logic required by, oh, Gabriel, you opened the Pandora box. That's a tough question. I'm going to put it at the end. Gabriel. What about returning data from the post? Why would you want to Why? Why would you want to mirror back the data you just received from your client? What we usually do, we get the ID back to the client and let them follow up with a get. I guess why? Because you might have added more data. You might have added more data to that. But what would you tell back to the client? What? Maybe the creation date? What? He can't take the time? His username as the creator? What? He doesn't know his username? So you have to come up with a business case to convince me why you need that, and I will still disagree. But you may, life is hard. You may be able to convince me, but it will be a hard battle. How to deal with huge get? So no, the answer is no. How to deal with huge get? Ooh la la. There are some options here. Sub-resources. It's clear, right? You do get/products reviews, good one. Also, you should consider changing the paradigm, GraphQL, plus dynamic attribute resolvers. It could actually fetch data when it's required. Zip the response. Right, fun. Hit a Mongo that has the JSON pre-serialized in a string in the document, so you can get fast response times and then scale the Mongo up. Expensive computation, you say. Split it into smaller pieces, or work on that to, I don't know, parallelize, optimize the algorithm somewhere in there. Pageable, very good one. Thank you, Ankit. Pageable, yes. Get them one by one. But there is another story with the paging. When you page through some result and they add more rows in between and your page is skew. But the pageable should be one of the options. HTOS. Oh, I wanted this question today. Let me tell you what I think about HTOS. Done. It's useful on the internet if you are Twitter, LinkedIn. Of course, you want to be SOA ready. Not SOA. SEO, search engine. Okay, ChatGPT able to, but between microservices in a controlled environment, I feel very, very over-engineered. Expensive computation usually require compute and store them. We shouldn't compute on request. Makes sense. We should somehow maybe cache them. I smell a cache. I'm afraid. But yeah, that's basically you are saying caching. So you guys, if you ever have a problem with your project, join these meetings and you get all the possible answers in business case to add data to the post response. Following up. Okay, we have a thread. The fight is on. Not this. In a larger environment, the service calls my IP to place an order with and alongside the order ID. I also add client data to the response, mirroring back the client data. Tell the clients to tell your caller for what client you placed the order. But how did you know for which one to place? How did you know for which client to place the order? Probably you read that from a GVT token. Okay, this of course you did not know. GWT token. Maybe not G, J. Maybe they could have read from the token themselves. Guessing here. Projections, streaming. Projections, very good one. More answers here. Get less data. I mean, less fields, but I don't think it will gonna work really. Projections, it's called. I actually mentioned this idea today. Select new from. Streaming, one more. Oh my God. Return a flux. A flux of review, good example. Review, it was the good one. You go for a mag, flux of reviews, 1,000 rows. And you allow the client to loop through them. This is reactive hell. From now on, I promise when I will put reactive, I will always put after reactive a dead man's developer's skull. Our lowercase, uppercase, should we accept both format in the URL or in what? Hato was returning which actions are available. It is very valuable for clients if you want Bookage to allow your clients to discover if your clients discover your API. In other words, if you're social media and anyone can call your API, it's fun. But if you know your clients, right? If you're unknown clients, it's sexy, it's cool, but in between microservices in a control company, the service is not the client, but the client data comes from the data. Oh, I see, Alexandra. Alexandra follows up on the post thing. Complicated. Up above. So the service is not in the client. No, the service is not the client, but the client data comes from data in the. Too late for this. For post to follow REST practices, better to always respond with header having the URL where they can get more information. They should decide on how to handle that. Yes, it is polite that in the response of a REST, in the post response, you have to be very, very traditional. You need to pass the location header. Now, if you are lazy, I would accept also between microservices or an ID in the body, just the ID that you have created. Maybe both for convenience. It depends on how. Yeah, and it also depends on who do you expose this REST. How about using the same DTOs in a microservice architecture? Should every microservice have a separate DTO? Have separate DTOs? Short answer, yes. That's what they are microservices. I'm talking about microservices that expose APIs. It depends on the size of those microservices. The last thing you want is to have 4 microservices in their public APIs, in the REST APIs. If one of them changes one thing, to have to change the other 4. This is the end of you are coupling the contract at that moment. Something is wrong with what you cut with how you cut the boundaries between those microservices. My guess is that microservices are too small. You cut them too small. Perhaps you should consider merging them back, like many of my clients are doing right now. Perhaps, just saying. If you've cut them too small, it's a long discussion, but that shouldn't happen much. In our app, the client is, I think I missed one. Should we modify same domain entity to support the different logic required by, ooh la. That's a tough one. This is deep. This is the deep one. I'm trying to keep up with all the questions, guys. I hope I don't mess anyone up here. And how to name correctly the DTOs. Yeah, that's the naming problem in our industry. Welcome, join the club. Sometimes I feel like we have many of them that are almost the same. So how the hell do I name them? Well, if you can't name them, what do they do? Can't name them. You did not understand. You did not understand what they do. Don't be afraid to call them with actions. I mean, like, yeah, of course, it's something request. API with multiple response schemas are those. I've been there, done that. Multiple response schemas. I've done exactly that. They were saying in the request header that they accept application JSON version 1.10, and in my response header, I was saying content type this, and I was following up with the JSON that contains that. I believe it's superficial. Most of the time, and it's also a bit monolithical in nature, I would prefer to have the versioning on the URL schema, like this, like /v1/. I would prefer to have that because that allows me to reorganize the URLs themselves. Remember the idea of having, for example, v1/products, and I decide to have the sub-resource called reviews. Hope that answers it. My God, how many questions today? Should we modify the same domain entities to support different logic required? I will post this in the meetup afterwards. Modify the same domain entities to support different logic required by API versions. This is a deep problem. I will have to. In the database, you have a single representation of your data. In your Java or backend, you have a single class. Java backend, you have a single class. But in your API, you have 2 DTOs, one for each version. Why did you change your API? You're happy. Why? Why did you break it? By the way, this is a good test for pronunciation. For those of you not English speaker native, try to speak to dictate in Mac or some AI tool. All right. Why did you change your API? Because there is some data that you have to have today in your entity. It's very dark. Pay attention. But what would you set on those fields when they call you via the old API that doesn't have these new fields of yours? Some default value. Then why didn't you set that default value in the old version, and you will just introduce the new field as an optional field without increasing the major version and breaking your client and having to hunt them down all the hallways? Great. There's a tough discussion here that we could realize at this point that if you do need those new fields, Exactly. You may have to have a new entity, a new service. Another question here comes along. Folks, I'm sorry to rush a bit. I'm trying to protect everyone's time a bit, but it's late. So what are best practices for mapping service domain errors in response? Well, for 400, if it's a payload error, that is not something that would fix if you retry. 500 otherwise, plus a code, if you want, if you are polite, in the body. So that they could, but that depends on how generous you want to be with them. That's optional. But at least this 400 bad requests, if it's their fault, if it's a missing field or a pattern that they did not match, usually the validation errors against like not null and all the friends from annotations. Okay. Yeah. Likes, man. Good. Any suggestion how to use response entity? No, too much, too deep, too technical, too niche. In our app client, it is us. Ooh, yes. Yes. So, for example, let me give you an example. For example, only the branch manager can approve a loan approval for a company. Bank branch manager. Interesting. So only that guy will have the button. How do we do that? Well, please welcome to get users current privileges. Done. This, I think, that I first wrote such an URL 15 years ago, which will bring in the front end a list of things that it can do, based on which you do your magic in the front end. I have search endpoint, which, let's see, I have a search endpoint with many request params in the control. But it's a search. How would you cause a breaking change? Many request params. You wanted to restructure them somehow, probably. That's why you went V2, I guess. Otherwise, when you add more criteria, you just put more criteria. And by the way, one more, I mean, it's an optional fields, right? And one more hint here. Don't hesitate to make post search and then pass the body. But it's not creating anything, Victor. So what? Here is the body clean with fields, which could be or could be not. I don't want you to put question mark and then follow up unless you want to make your URLs shareable to others. Like if I go to some website, this really, really cool website that I'm virtually addicted today. And if you search something here, you're gonna have this URL that you can copy paste to your wife. So good. What else? Body as well. Why post? Post because you want body. Yes, get could have body. Because you are afraid some proxy / router / reverse proxy will not with cache will drop the get body. It's a trick. Some servers old, when they saw you were a get, they didn't even look for the body. They just dropped the request and they forwarded without the body. Stupid, but yeah. Privileges endpoint does not take into account the state of the resource. Oof, yes, you're right. Coming back on this with the proof, it has to be a company so that it requires your approval. If anyone can approve a loan for a physical person, for an individual, but only for companies we have this trick, then the flag, whether you can approve it or not, should be on the company. The loan, not on the company, my bad, on the DTO. In other words, it starts to get shady a bit because the backend now has to correlate. When you ask for /loans one for you will have a field called can approve apart from the others. It's shady because the response you get will be different than what the other user will get. Yeah, you can upgrade it. You can upgrade it from V1 to V2. From V1 to V2 if you add optional fields. Yes, you shouldn't write this, just spell it. Yes. I know. Just a second. Yes, perfect, much better. We need pull request reviews. For the get with many params, we can have them as params from API and Spring we can map them. Yes, okay, but do you have a limitation about the length of the URL? An URL will be truncated. Very good that you know that, Hussein. Very good. My God, Hussein is on fire. Will be truncated to 2,000 chars, usually by someone on the way. You need to test that. If you are going on the internet, you're taking chances there. I don't like it. Yes, exactly. Flamen also pointed out. Thank you. I finished. I can't believe. I finished. I finished.
Somebody stop me.
What is this madness? Vietnam, hello. What else? Thank you for the session. Goodbye. 3 seconds, we end. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, guys. See you next time. Over and out. Back to your life. Goodbye.